We are opened up to last night's homework, which was workbook page 27 and 28. On page 27, we had numbers 2, 4, and 9. So for number 2, you were given this number, 863.141, and you were asked to write it in expanded form. Now, our book sometimes writes expanded form in a different way than what you may have written. So, for example, they take the digit, this 8, and then they multiply it by its place value. So they took 8 times 100. If you just wrote 800, that's totally okay. Then plus, and they wrote 6 times 10. If you just wrote 60, that would work. Plus, and they wrote 3 times 1. If you just wrote 3, that would work. Plus, and then they did the same thing for the decimal places as well. They took 1 times 1/10 because it's in the tenths place. If you just put plus 0.1, that would work. Then they wrote plus 4 times 100th. If you just wrote plus 0.04, that would work. Plus, and then they wrote 1 times 1,000th. And if you wrote plus 0.001, that would also work. So they do it a little differently, but as long as you have 800 plus 60 plus 3 plus 0.1 plus 0.04 plus 0.001, that would work. Then after number 2, we had number 4, and that was the opposite. They gave you a number in expanded form, and you're supposed to write it in standard form. So 1 plus 9/10 plus 800ths plus 1,000th would get you 1 and, remember that and is where a decimal goes, 981 thousandths as your answer. Then the last one we had on page 27 was number 9. And I know we didn't talk a whole lot about equivalent decimals yesterday. We'll be talking more about that in a future lesson. But they gave you the number 2 and 50 hundredths. And what you want to remember about equivalent decimals is that any zeros you add on to the end of a decimal, meaning all the way to the right, it will be equivalent. So we could have written 2.50000000, and that would still be equivalent to 2.50. Same goes if we were to take off this 0 as they did as one of the answers. 2.5 is equivalent to 2.50, and it's equivalent to 2.500. Now, if we were to say, okay, 2.05, that's not equivalent because we're putting a 0 and moving the 5 out of its place. It's only equivalent if the same numbers that aren't 0, or the same numbers are in the same places, and we're just adding zeros all the way to the right after the decimal. Okay, so if we try to insert a 0 in the middle somewhere, that's not going to work because it throws all the other numbers out of their places. All right, and then on page 28, we had number 12 and number 16. So number 12 said there are 275 people in the movie theater. The same number of people are seated in each of the 5 different sections of the theater. How many people are seated in each section? Well, there are 275 people total, 5 different sections, so we would take 275 and divide it by 5, which would get us 55. And do you notice my book is missing something as a part of its answer? Since this is a word problem, we need a unit. So my book wouldn't have gotten all points because they messed up. 55 people, or 55 people in each section. That would be our full answer for number 12. Then we had number 16. So for number 16, it was a little similar to what we were doing on page 27, except then you were supposed to find the equivalent decimals. So first, we were given a number in expanded form, 8 times 100 plus 3 times 1/10 plus 6 times 100. So that would be the same as 8.36 or 8 and 36 hundredths. Then once we had our number, we were supposed to come over to the box and look to see which of these is equivalent to this number in expanded form. Well, first of all, they have 800, I think I said 8 and 36 hundredths, 800 and 36 hundredths, sorry. They have 800 and 36 hundredths, 800.36 already here, so that would definitely be one of them. Then, just like I said, it's only an equivalent decimal if a 0 is added all the way to the right of the number. So the only other one that works would be 800 and 360 thousandths because they added the 0 on the end and they kept everything else the same. And if we look here, 8.360, yes, it has the 360 all the way to the right of the decimal, but it doesn't have 800 in front of the decimal. This next one, 800.306, it doesn't work because they inserted the 0 between the 3 and the 6. That throws the number off because the 6 now is not in the place it's supposed to be. Same with this one next to it, 800.036. They put the 0 in front of the 3, so now the 3 and the 6 aren't in the places they should be. And then the one all the way to the left, 8.36, it's not equivalent because they took out the 2 zeros in the 800 part, so it's a completely different number now. So remember, equivalent decimal, it's only equivalent if we're adding zeros all the way to the right after the decimal. We can't be inserting zeros in between the numbers or the digits of a number that are already there. What you are going to do next is open up in your math notebook to the next clean page, virtual learners. At the top, you are going to label it Prodigy Practice, and then you are going to write today's date of October 14th, 2020, 10-14-20, and I would like you to go into Prodigy and play for about half an hour, and any work that you need to do, you're going to do on this page. Have a great rest of your Wednesday.